Why is AI not going to replace most developers? Or rather, why AI shouldn't replace most developers? This is Technology for Humans. So we've seen in the news recently that a lot of tech companies, large tech companies, are laying off or planning to in the near future lay off staff. And the undertone of that, the reason for that is that AI could possibly do their jobs. And in some cases, those people are being redistributed to other places in businesses. And in some cases, they're just being laid off because it's assumed that a machine can do their job better. I think those companies are not going to benefit from those moves except for an immediate win on their bottom line and share price. Longer term, they'll be putting those staff back on, is my view, because they'll need to. And in some cases, that might cause some problems in the short term for those businesses as code starts to fail or things go wrong for them, because the onus is now on a smaller number of developers to produce a much larger amount of output. Let me go over some reasons why the developers are not just important, but crucial. The first being, of course, that the volume of code that's needed increases dramatically over time. And as we move closer and closer into a fully tech age, we're not there yet, into a fully tech age, it is true that applications become more and more prevalent, more and more niche and unique to use cases. And so the number of developers needed to produce those is going to increase, even with AI tools producing magnitudes of order larger amounts of code. We still need developers to look after that. Whilst the code can be written very quickly, it can be written only as fast as the requirements allow. Project managers exist and are good at turning vague business requirements into scope. However, project managers are not perfect at this. We know that. The people who are very, very good at this are the developers themselves. The developers actually take the tickets that they're given and work out how to turn that into actionable pieces of code. They will continue to do that and will be required to continue to do that. And if we let managers tell the machines how to code, we won't get adequate pieces of code. And if it's left to a small handful of developers, they will become too overloaded to do that job properly, check the requirements and do the testing. Writing good code requires an understanding of the overall architecture and a much larger context window than most AI tooling can do. It requires understanding how the infrastructure fits together. It requires understanding how the deployments work. It requires a lot of understanding of third-party tools that might not be part of the context window of the AI. Now, that might change in the future. That might happen somewhere down the line. But right now, today, that's not the case. And I have a feeling it is going to be some time before that is the case. And even so, the expense and the cost of keeping too much of that in context might outweigh the benefit. And so an individual, a real person, is still needed to do that. When you have all of these third-party tools connecting together, you can do that sloppily and just connect them in an ad hoc fashion and probably get a result. And by adding layers of code onto that, you will produce something that is a facsimile of the real thing. A good developer will work out how to reduce that workload, reduce that code so that those integrations and the API uses are kept to a minimum. So you can overdo things. It's like, if you've got an app that's written poorly, you can just throw more compute at it and the app will seem like it's working at the correct speed, but that hides the fact that the code's poorly written. You could optimize the code and run it on lower compute, and that would be a smarter way to handle it. Similar sort of thing. Ongoing maintenance, again, the context windows don't allow for ongoing maintenance to be done in the most efficient manner possible. Every time you want to maintain a piece of code, it's like the machine has to sort of start again and go, okay, load everything into the context window, read through the code as if it was the first time that the machine has ever seen that code. Now, again, that might change in the future, but right now it isn't the case. So having a developer who understands and has some of that context inside of them is going to be required. The next points are going to be important. Trust and ownership. Trust because if we know there is a human connected with the code, we're going to trust it more. Machines still do dumb things from time. They still hallucinate from time to time, a lot less than they used to, surprisingly less than they used to. but it does still happen, and it can still happen, and you might still find the database deleted because someone wrote a slightly vague or ambiguous prompt, or just because the machine thought it was needed. Or it might shut down an entire service, as recently happened with Railway. An entire service was shut down by an automated process. Now, if there was a human looking at that, they would have gone, hey, I think Railway might require these services. Let's not turn them off. And of course, a human had to turn them back on again. But none of what I've said really is a replacement for human judgment, wisdom, experience. Those things don't get replaced. Those things are still required, at least for now. And if we remove the majority of our workforce that contains all of that judgment and experience and wisdom, then we lose the company itself. We lose the character and the personality and the understanding that is required. And we will probably end up with highly lobotomized, personality-less pieces of software that don't actually do the things that we need, but are highly efficient at doing it. I am fond of saying that software development is not actually about the code, but about the outcome. And, I probably have changed that viewpoint a little bit, because the beauty of the code is still important. The excellence of the syntax is still very, very important. But end of the day, it is the output that actually matters the most. And so if we're doing our jobs correctly, then that is what we will get. Thank you for listening to me.